Hello and welcome to Around the Region. I'm Kayla Buchanan. I have a great show lined up for you tonight, starting off with a visit by Lloydminster City Mayor Jeff Mulligan. Thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here. Always good to be on Around the Region.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now let's start off with next year's budget that was approved by City Council last week. When you guys went into the meetings, what kind of priorities were you looking at?
Well, you know, it's important to make sure that we look at both the capital projects separate from the operating. We understand how much is funded by tax and how much is funded by grants. But our highest priorities presented by the management team was to make sure that service levels stayed the same or slightly improved over the year, that we weren't taking away any services. So that was the first tenet, was no services reduced, same level of service.
Well, it seems like a very important thing. Now, the meetings were open to the public, I understand. Did you guys get a lot of public and community input into the budget?
No, you know, the strength of a city our size and the touch points we have is that we get a lot of that input on an ongoing basis, and that our management team are in circulation in the communities and in the departments they lead. We as councillors and mayor, we don't expect to get that feedback during the session, where they're open so people can see the due diligence that's done. We actually have to do the data collection and the interaction before we get to that point.
Which makes total sense. And what kind of feedback are you hearing from the community now that it's been passed?
Well, I think nobody's ever going to jump up and down and say, hooray, hooray, taxes are going up a little bit. But the bottom line that we're hearing from people, largely 50 years old and younger, is if you show us precisely where the money's going and we see the value of it in the coming year, while we don't have to like it, we'll accept it and support it.
Which is definitely, I guess, how things should be. Now, property taxes, I understand, are going up 3%, and assessment values are estimated to be up 4%. When it's increased like that, how do you go about explaining where the money's being allocated? Well,
it's only a 3% increase in taxes. The 4% assessment growth is if we raise taxes not 1 cent, we'd have 4% growth in the city. The total amount of property we would be taxing would be 4% greater because of new buildings like the ATCO building, the Husky building, the hundreds of new homes. So there's a 3% increase on the mill rate, and that's really the same as the cost of living, or CPI, is in our region. So if it's going to cost 3% more to get the snow shoveled, if it's going to cost 3% more to buy the products that we use to deliver the services or pay our people, then we have to get that 3% in order to be able to maintain, because remember, a core tenet was maintain the level of services at where they are, or a little better.
So it's definitely on par with everything else.
Absolutely.
Now, the feedback from the property tax, what are you hearing about that?
Well, you know, most people that compare us to our comparative cities say our taxes as a municipal component are way low. We provide excellent service across a broad range of service areas, and our actual taxes in the City of Lloydminster are very, very low, in the bottom third of all cities that would compare to us.
Oh, wow. So the extra revenue, I guess, that's coming in from the little bit of the raise that there was, are there any big areas that that money's being allocated to?
Not operations money. The operations money simply covers the increase in cost of CPI and the cost of living increases that will be accorded to our people. You know, with the growth in the city at 5% per year, if you can hold your taxes to a 3% increase on a mill rate, I think what we're doing is we're saying the growth rate is outstripping the cost rate or the expenditure rate. That's exactly what businesses want to do. Grow your company faster than you grow your expenses, and that's precisely what we're doing at the city.
Now, the growth of Lloyd as a whole, how would you explain that? Like, what exactly is growth?
Well, growth for us, there's a number of ways we can determine it, but the easiest one is the assessment year over year. You know, when you go from $3.2 billion of assessment to 3.4 and 3.5, you can quickly correlate that growth back to a number that says that we had this much growth. We had a record year for building permits of over $150 million. So when you start looking at the $150 million against the $3 billion assessment, you know that you've got a growth rate that's over 5%.
And when you were going into setting up the budget, what were some of the challenges you guys faced?
Well, you know, law enforcement, policing, fire, those essential services. Our infrastructure's aging, like many municipalities. When you grow your city at a compounded growth rate of 4% per year, for year over year over year, and you tax your infrastructure, so that's the stuff in the ground, the buildings above the ground, the parks and rec facilities, the museum facilities, the theater, all of those things get a heck of a lot of use. And how do you maintain them? You've got to maintain those assets, and that's the key for us.
Perfect. Now, how would you describe the budget overall? Are you very proud of what you guys put forth?
I'm proud of what management is now doing in terms of taking a very business-like approach. When I got elected, it was October of 2009. I asked for the budget for the 2010 year. It hadn't been done yet.
Oh, wow.
You know, when I look back, the financial statements hadn't been approved for the prior year that ended in December of the prior year.
That must have been kind of a shock, maybe.
It was a total shock coming from business.
Yeah.
Today, we have a real focus on the business components, and that correlating to a service culture. So we have I think we have a real good business model in place now. We have staff that are committed to it and a council that's very, very supportive, and they're enabling management to do their job.
Well, that sounds great. Well, we're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more from the Mayor after this.